morning sunlight crept through the heavy curtains of the old house, casting faint beams across the cluttered room. Stacks of books and newspapers lined every wall, teetering precariously as if daring gravity to test them. Amid the chaos, Miss Connor Beatrix shuffled into the kitchen, her cane tapping rhythmically against the worn wooden floor. "Good morning, Bobby," she said warmly, her voice breaking the silence. Her mismatched cardigan and bright floral skirt clashed spectacularly, adding a burst of color to the sepia-toned room. She made her way to the counter, where an old tin kettle rested. As she filled it with water, a shadow shifted in the far corner of the room, pooling unnaturally against the wall. Yes, I know you're hungry," she said, a faint chuckle escaping her lips. "Patience, my dear, breakfast is coming." Beatrix set the kettle on the stove, her movements slow but practiced. Beside her, an old ceramic bowl sat on the floor, its glaze cracked and worn. She crouched carefully, placing it in the shadowy corner. "There," she muttered, brushing her hands on her skirt. "Your spot as always." A soft growl rumbled through the room, low and resonant, but not menacing. Beatrix turned her head slightly, smiling. "Oh, don't pretend to be cross with me. You know I spoil you." The kettle's shrill whistle broke the moment. Beatrix moved to pour the hot water into her teacup and with care into the ceramic bowl. From a nearby tin, she scooped dried herbs and bits of what looked like dried meat into the bowl, the scent filling the air with earthy warmth. "Eat up," she said, standing back. As the liquid steamed, the shadow in the corner shifted again. It stretched and curled like smoke, forming a vague, hulking outline with tendrils of darkness that flickered and swirled. Two faint, glowing eyes blinked open, their gaze fixed on Beatrix. She smiled gently. "There's my good boy." The creature lowered itself, the shadowy mass flowing fluidly as it moved toward the bowl. The growls softened into something like a purr, a deep, resonant vibration that filled the room. Beatrix leaned against the counter, watching with a mix of affection and weariness. "You're such a comfort to me, you know. But we must be careful, Bobby. People wouldn't understand." The lace curtains fluttered faintly as a breeze slipped through a crack in the window, carrying with it the faint rustle of the outside world. Beatrix's sharp gray eyes drifted toward the oak tree in the yard, where she knew young Ashwin would likely be perched in his treehouse, watching. "He's curious again," she murmured, her lips curving into a knowing smile. "Children are like that, so full of questions they don't yet fear the answers to." The creature paused mid-slurp, its glowing eyes flicking toward the window. The growl returned, low and protective. Beatrix shook her head with a soft laugh. "Don't fuss, Bobby. He's harmless, for now." A sudden knock at the door startled her. The shadow froze, the glowing eyes narrowing as the purring ceased. Beatrix clutched the pendant at her neck, her fingers trembling slightly. "Quiet now," she whispered. The shadows melted back into the corner, leaving only silence as Beatrix shuffled toward the door. Peeking through the crack, she found Mrs. Harper standing there, her basket of baked goods in hand. "Good morning, Miss Beatrix," Mrs. Harper said brightly. "I thought I'd bring you some fresh scones." Beatrix tightened her grip on the door. "That's kind of you, Mrs. Harper, but I've told you before, I don't need charity." "It's not charity, dear, just a neighborly gesture." Mrs. Harper tilted her head, trying to peer past Beatrix into the house. "You know, some of us have been hearing strange noises from your place. Growls, scratches. You don't keep a dog, do you?" Beatrix's eyes narrowed. "Good day, Mrs. Harper," she said curtly, shutting the door with more force than necessary. She leaned against it, her heart pounding. Behind her, the shadows stirred once more, Bobby's eyes glowing faintly from the corner. "It's all right, Bobby," she murmured, her voice steadier now. "She's gone, but we'll have to be more careful." The creature's outline emerged again, its massive form curling protectively into the room. Beatrix reached out a trembling hand, brushing her fingers lightly against the smoky tendrils of shadow. "We'll be fine," she whispered, as much to herself as to the beast. "We always are."